Have you ever opened your phone to do one simple thing, and 5 minutes later, you're doing something completely different? Or walked into a room and immediately felt that something was wrong, even though you couldn't explain why? We usually think of ourselves as people who make decisions consciously. We imagine a little voice inside our head examining the facts, comparing the options, and then choosing what to do. But your mind doesn't work that way all the time. A huge part of your everyday behavior happens before you consciously realize a decision has been made. And once you understand this, ordinary moments in your life start looking completely different. Imagine a simple stick figure standing in front of a vending machine. There are 10 drinks available. The figure looks at all of them. At first, choosing seems easy. Then the figure notices one familiar bottle. Without thinking much, the hand reaches toward it. The figure stops and looks confused. Why did I choose that? There was no long debate, no detailed analysis. The choice simply felt right. This is one of the most fascinating things about the human mind. Sometimes, the feeling of a decision arrives before the explanation for that decision. Your brain is constantly collecting tiny pieces of information. What you saw yesterday, what happened the last time you tried something, what someone's expression looked like, how a certain place made you feel, which option feels familiar, which one feels strange. Most of these details never reach your conscious awareness as separate memories. Instead, they combine into a general impression, and that impression can influence what you do next. Now imagine the stick figure walking down a street. Two restaurants appear. One is completely empty. The other has people sitting inside. The figure immediately feels more attracted to the busy restaurant. But nobody told the figure that the food was better. The brain simply noticed a signal. Other people chose this. Sometimes that signal can be useful. If many people independently choose something, it may suggest quality, but it can also create an illusion of value. We can mistake popularity for evidence. The strange part is that the brain does not always wait for complete information. It hates having to process every possibility from scratch, so it uses shortcuts. These shortcuts help you recognize faces, navigate familiar places, understand conversations, and make thousands of small decisions without exhausting your attention. But shortcuts have a hidden cost. They can make an assumption feel like a fact. Imagine the stick figure receiving a short message. Okay, that's it. For letters. The figure stares at the screen. Suddenly, the mind starts building a story. Are they angry? Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Nothing new has actually happened. The message is still just okay. But the mind has started filling the empty space with possibilities. And this is where human psychology gets interesting. When information is incomplete, your mind doesn't simply leave the space blank. It tries to create meaning. Sometimes that meaning is accurate. Sometimes it is completely wrong. The brain is constantly trying to predict what comes next because prediction makes the world easier to navigate. If you already know what usually happens in a situation, you don't need to spend as much energy analyzing it. But when something breaks the pattern, your attention suddenly becomes stronger. Imagine the stick figure walking into its kitchen every morning. The chair is there. The table is there. The refrigerator is there. Nothing unusual happens, so the figure barely notices any of it. Then one morning, the refrigerator is missing. Suddenly, the figure stops. Why? Because the brain wasn't actively studying the refrigerator every morning. It had simply learned that the refrigerator belonged there. The moment reality breaks the expected pattern, attention wakes up. This is why unexpected events can feel disproportionately powerful. Your mind is constantly comparing what is happening with what it expected to happen. When those two things match, you move forward without much thought. When they suddenly disagree, your attention says, wait, something changed. And that reaction can be useful. It can help you notice problems. But it can also make uncertainty feel uncomfortable even when nothing dangerous is happening. Imagine the stick figure waiting for an important message. 1 minute passes, then 5, then 20. The figure checks the phone again. Nothing. The longer the answer takes, the more the mind starts generating explanations. Maybe they are busy. Maybe they forgot. Maybe something happened. Maybe they are upset. The brain doesn't have enough information, but it keeps producing possibilities because uncertainty creates a demand for explanation. Now notice something important. The emotional reaction can become stronger even though the amount of evidence has not increased. That means a person can feel more certain about a story simply because they have been thinking about it longer. This is one of the reasons overthinking can become so convincing. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity can sometimes feel like truth. A thought repeated inside your mind may eventually become emotionally convincing even when you never received new evidence. The stick figure writes a sentence on a board. I feel it, therefore it must be true. Then the figure erases it. Because feelings are real, but feelings are not always accurate measurements of reality. Fear can tell you to be careful. Embarrassment can tell you that something matters to you. Excitement can tell you that an opportunity feels meaningful. But none of these emotions automatically proves what another person thinks, what will happen tomorrow, or whether a decision is objectively correct. Your emotions are signals. They are not always verdicts. Now imagine another scene. The stick figure has been working on a project for 3 hours. The desk is covered with papers. The figure looks exhausted and thinks, I must be making progress. But when the figure looks at the actual result, very little has changed. Why does this happen? Because the brain naturally notices effort. Effort feels like evidence. If something required energy, time, frustration, and concentration, it can feel valuable simply because it was difficult. But difficulty and effectiveness are not the same thing. Imagine trying to open a locked door by pushing against it for an hour. You worked incredibly hard, but the key was sitting in your pocket the entire time. The lesson is not work less. The lesson is make sure your effort is moving in the right direction. Sometimes the smartest move is not pushing harder. It is stopping, looking at the problem differently, and asking, is there a better way? Your brain also has another fascinating tendency. It pays attention to what feels personally relevant. Imagine hundreds of people walking through a crowded street. Nobody notices the same things. One person notices shoes. Another notices cars. Another notices faces. Another notices business signs. The environment is the same, but attention creates different versions of that environment. You are not consciously experiencing every detail around you. Your mind is selecting what deserves your attention. That means attention is not just something you have. It is something your brain constantly allocates. And whatever repeatedly captures your attention can begin to feel more important. This is why what you watch, read, discuss, and repeatedly think about can influence what seems noticeable in your world. If you spend an entire day thinking about mistakes, you may suddenly notice every mistake. If you spend an entire day looking for opportunities, you may begin noticing possibilities that were always there. The world hasn't necessarily changed. Your attention has. And that leads to one of the most useful questions you can ask yourself. What is my mind repeatedly training me to notice? The stick figure stands in front of a giant screen showing hundreds of thoughts passing by. Some are useful. Some are emotional. Some are old. Some are predictions. Some are assumptions. The figure doesn't try to destroy them. Instead, the figure watches. Because awareness creates something incredibly valuable, distance. The moment you can observe a thought instead of immediately becoming the thought, you have more freedom to decide what happens next. You can think, I'm having the thought that they are angry, instead of, they are angry. You can think, I'm feeling nervous, instead of, this situation is dangerous. You can think, this feels difficult, instead of, I'm failing. That tiny change in language can create a tiny change in perspective. And sometimes, a tiny change in perspective changes an entire decision. Your mind will always create shortcuts. It will always predict. It will always notice patterns. It will always react before you have complete information. That isn't a flaw. It's part of being human. The goal isn't to silence your mind. The goal is to stop treating every automatic thought as an instruction. So the next time your mind instantly tells you what something means, pause. Look at the evidence. Notice the feeling. Separate what you know from what you're assuming. And then decide. Because the most powerful form of self-awareness isn't controlling every thought that enters your mind. It's realizing that you don't have to obey every thought that does.